Hey, welcome once again. Today I wanted to try some animation on a 3D mapped clip using Cinema 4D and a little compositing in After Effects. We're going to track the camera in AE and export to Cinema, then add our 123D catch model, which will animate with an explosion effector to create a dynamic intro. So I'd probably want to get rid of that drone shadow there on the tower if I was doing this for real using this technique, which I've outlined in a tutorial over on my other channel. It's quite straightforward to do. There are other methods. But anyway, let's get stuck in with our After Effects. Today we're working with Fly's Yorkshire Tower clip. If we zoom in here, you can see the location in Sheffield and the name of the tower. Boots Folly. Use that for the title in the example. Come over to After Effects, where I have already done a little bit of warp stabilizing and tracked the camera. What we have are nice tracking points here, and I want to start by setting the origin. So I'm just going to select a few of those key points. That should do it. Right click and say set ground plane and origin. Then I'm going to come over here a sec, and very important, I need to create the camera and a null. So let's just select a group there. Create null and camera. The null comes in very small, but the default setting is for the anchor point to be in the top left hand corner, whereas we want it to be in the center so that when it imports, it's all lines up nicely with the way that Cinema works. So I'm just going to press Shift, Apple and Y here, and that will let me know the width of that null object. So we were looking at 20 pixels. So if I come over to the anchor point and change this to 10 and 10, that'll now sit in the center, and I'm going to line this up with the bottom left hand corner, which is what I used when doing the 123D catch capture as well. Okay, I'm happy with that, so let's export this for Cinema 4D. But before we do that, let's just rename this comp Boots Folly. There we go. And file, export, Maxon Cinema 4D exporter. So if you jump over to Parallels Desktop now, where I've got 123D catch running, you can see here's the model that I imported from, I think it was, how many images? 48 images. It's done a pretty good job scanning it all in, and you can see that I've set these control points here and aligned those axes with the model so that it's the same as what we just did in After Effects. And the other crucial thing is that if we go over to the preferences, you see I've changed the up axis from Z to Y. So that's going to be better for when we import this into Cinema 4D. So I'll just go to File and Export Capture As. Okay, all done. So now in Cinema, you can see here's the previous project that I did. Let's create a new one. Actually, no, we don't need that. Close that. We want to open our project that we just created from After Effects. So there's this one, and we can see here now we've got our nice camera move all set up. Let's create a new material, and we're going to add the video. And down here in the editor, we want to animate preview, and let's make it to the highest resolution. create a background object and drop that on. So now as we scrub through the timeline, this is playing. And you can see that null object we created is lining up nicely. So now let's add our OBJ. So you can see that's come in way too big. Let's get our texture on. I'm going to put this on the luminance channel. There's only one file, so I don't really need to worry about the MTL file. Again, in the editor, let's set this preview to the maximum resolution. Okay, there it is. So we want to put this inside our null and zero it out. I believe there is a shortcut for this, but I can't remember what that is at the moment. And then T for scale. Bring this down, down, down until it's approximately the same size as our clip. I'm going to actually add transparency so that I can see what I'm doing. It's just a temporary measure, there we go. So that needs to come back up. It's lining up fairly well at the moment. Just scrub through and check it. I mean, the key moment is here where we're going to have the transition, so I can see that it's slightly over on that side, so I'm just going to move it across a touch. Hey, that's looking much better now. Cool. So the next thing we need to do is we need to get this the mesh of this object like right down. So I'm going to duplicate this, Apple and drag, and we can hide that now. We can delete all these materials here, we don't need those anymore. And we can just see our raw mesh. Let's just turn that off. And if we come over to point mode here, you'll see there are, yeah, lots of polygons. So we want to massively reduce that. I'm just going to rename this now. And we'll use the polygon reduction effector to begin with. Let's see how it does. You can see down here in the bottom left it's churning away. So there we have it. I think we could possibly go a bit higher. I'm going to go up to 95%. Again, reducing polygons down, so we're getting a lot less. Yeah, okay, that's more like it. So let's make the current state of object there. We'll turn that off. And now we have it. Whoops. And rename that again. Low poly. Okay. Now what we want for our animation is for there to be quite a lot of polygons around the actual tower, but the rest of this landscape here can be like, you know, very, very low poly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here. Let's actually switch over to our default camera. Go to the selection tool here, let's make it a little bit bigger, and then we can just select this tower part on its own, and then using the legendary keyboard shortcuts we're going to go U-Y to grow the selection. Okay, looking good. So now we use the shortcut to invert the selection, U-I. And here I'm going to optimize. So let's set this right up to like 1,000 centimeters, see what happens. Okay, that's too much. Let's try 400. Still too high. 100? Better. Okay. Now we have far less polygons around there, but there's still too many. But actually, before I go any further, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert the selection again, UI, and I'm going to split this so that I have just the tower element on its own. Let's call that tower only. Okay, we can hide that for now. Let's go back to this one. UI. So, we've got a few bits of detail around here, but again, as we get further away from the tower, we want to have far less polygons again. So, there's probably a way to do this more quickly, but this is what I've got at the moment to work with. So just get rid of these, come around again, and then we're going to optimize again, this time 200. Cool. And then let's go even further out. Optimize again. 300. And I'm just deselecting these polygons here, and I'm going to optimize one last time for these really far away extreme points. So we get some really chunky polygons there. Right. Okay, so let's go back to our camera tracker now, and you can see that if we play this through, we're getting the model mapped into the exact position of where our actual shot was, and so that we can now comp those two together really easily, I hope. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to blow this baby up. Let's get in our effector. So we're going to go to the explosion effector, and I'm going to drop that into our Yorkshire Tower there. You can see that it's already blowing it up. Let's just get an aerial view so that we can position this correctly. So that's already looking pretty cool. If I just do a very quick render of that. But we want to actually animate that, so there's a few settings we're going to have to change in the effector. The key one being the time. So let's just keyframe that in to begin with. Let's start off here at 100 and Apple click to add a keyframe, and then we'll go all the way through to, let's go to like 170, and we'll add another keyframe there, 0. And I think we'll need to give that a bit of easing so that it's coming to a gradual stop. Where am I? There we go. It's already got quite a bit on it. But yeah, that's better. So now we see this blow apart. And yeah, the settings need quite a bit of tweaking. Before we get bogged down in that, let's just create a material for this so it isn't just grey. We don't need that one. Double click there. And we want it to be black with a Fresnel. And this needs to be pretty dark grey. Let's just invert the knots there. Then let's get some specularity. Let's turn that right up, a bit more width, and we'll add a reflection. And let's add a Fresnel to this as well. So we go for the dialectic and glass, and let's change this color to just a very, very slight blue. Okay, let's drop that on. Oh, and let's also add a bit of transparency as well, just to really get that look. We're going to need some lights too, but I think these chunks are too thick, so let's change that first. Let's bring this down to like 3 centimeters. Yeah, that's better. Okay, let's have a look at this. Yeah, it's starting to look pretty cool. So let's bring in a light, and we'll just drop this right in the center of that tower, and then we'll create another light, but this time we're going to use an infinite light, and let's make this blue. Turn up the intensity, and what we want to do is we want to get this to be pointing like down onto the surface so that we get a nice reflection off of it, like this. Yes. Okay. Cool. Right. So now we need to tweak this explosion so it's all happening in the right way. Now you can spend a long time playing with this, as I've discovered, but for the sake of this example I've kind of kept a note of what worked, and I'll just plug those settings in. You can already see that the explosion is happening. You know, the easing I put on it is way too much. Let's just have a quick look at this. Apple art or render. Yeah, it's looking really cool. We can turn the anti-aliasing up a little bit later on. So, what was I going to do? Yeah, we need to change those explosion settings. So let's come into the explosion effector, and to start off with, let's change this world gravity so that it's Y+, so it's coming from the top down rather than from the bottom up. Okay, and let's add a little bit of rotation and turn the decay. Let's turn the decay right up. Let's just change our preview area here so that we're looping in the right zone. There we go. So you can see that the range is like nowhere near big enough. The time is the green sphere. The range is this red one here. So I'm going to go over to the explosion settings, and I'm going to turn that range right up. Let's go for like 10,000. Bang. See, that's like way off the scale now. So then our cluster, we're going to change this so that they're in smaller polygon clusters, so 1 to 5, and that way we're going to get lots of tiny little shards. And we'll probably need to tweak this blast speed just to get it, you know, get everything out of shot by the time this is started. But the last little effect is to go to the special here and add a little bit of twist. So let's put that up to 10 with 100% variation. Let's have a look at it now. So it's beginning to look a bit more like our example. Got some nice small shards there. Let's come over here then and change the blast speed. I'm just going to come forward to the point here where it's just kind of completed the implosion, and I'm going to put a keyframe there, and then we're going to come all the way back to the start. I'm going to turn this up, which will gradually push all of those polygons out. There we go. Let's keyframe that. Let's take a look at it now. Yeah, I think I'm going to move the whole explosion effect up just so it's catching the top a bit more. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, now we're getting more of that kind of vortexy, swirling element. So you can see how just from the slightest change in position we do get quite a different effect. So it's better not to push things too hard. So now to get this reveal like we have in the example where we are exposing the final clip, we're going to need to make a matte which we'll have to render out as a separate pass and composite in After Effects. And we'll also need to fade these lights out at the point that the transition happens so that we don't get any of the materials coming through. So I'm going to do the lights first. So from the time when it's complete, we're going to go over to our first Omni light here, keyframe the intensity and come down to 0 here, and we'll do the same with the infinite light, just do it a little bit later on. So once it stops imploding, again we want to reveal the footage, but we don't want it to just kind of wipe across. There needs to be a nice transition where we're actually using the geometry of this tower. So let's duplicate this, Apple and drag, and we can take our tower only, move this down here, and let's group these together, and we'll call this reveal matte. Now in here in the material we're going to make this just white, and we're going to change this explosion effector completely. We're no longer animating the time, just want that to be 100% the whole time. What we are going to animate is the range, so I'm just going to turn this one off now because it's confusing me. Let's go to the effect, explosion, and come back to here, keyframe that there, and then bring this all the way down. So you can see the polygons just return without animating. Let's bring this back. Move that up so it does the whole thing. Ah, did I leave some? Yeah, I left some keyframes on here, so I need to delete this track. Turn this up. Let's go back to our blast range there. Okay, now it's working. change that so it's a little bit delayed. Okay, cool. So the only problem we're getting here is because we're using a white matte now, if I turn that off, it's not going to be able to matte that out, so we need to have a separate pass, which is the tower itself, and that's where this comes in. So we need to make this totally black. So now, as that comes in, it's still going to be hidden behind. And we can just do a wipe up in After Effects, or we could do something else like I guess we could use a Boolean. I don't like to use that very much because it usually gives you a massive headache, but I think in this situation it'll be fine. So yeah, let's just use a Boolean transition here, and we will use a sphere, scale that up, and let's see if I can remember correctly what setting we need. So I think we need A subtracts B, is that right? Yes, it is. Okay, so we start down there, keyframe the sphere there, and up to the top there. Okay, let's take the easing off that. So I'm going to go to my sphere now. Zoom in. Cool. Okay, so we can hide this for now. The final touch that I wanted to apply here was to create, if we go back to the example again, you'll see that there are these very faint kind of lines within the mesh, so that it really helps you to identify the polygons and everything. And that just, I think, sort of seals the look. It's quite an old style, but I still really like it. It's kind of that plexusy type look. So the way you do that is to create a Mograph object which will be connected onto each polygon. Now you can imagine that is going to really kind of crunch your render time and processor. So if you're not on a fast machine, maybe stay away from this section, but it just helps to kind of refine that bit of the look. So to create that, what we need is a Mograph object, and we're going to use the Yorkshire Tower, and inside here we're going to put a very small cylinder, and we're going to make that white. So before we put it in, let's make it really, really small. 0.01 centimeters wide. I'm going to drop that on this, and then you can barely see it. So that's what we want. Let's just render that. Quick footnote, guys, if you are following along, make sure you set the rotation segments to 1, not 36. That will more than half your render time. This is quite different to what we had before. It's a kind of like hairy version. What we wanted to do is to align to those polygon edges. So where is it now? We take the distribution, we put it to edge. So yeah, we need to scale it to the edge and put the edge scale to 100. And there it is. Now if we turn the anti-aliasing up, we will lose all that mess from the dots. So you get these nice fine lines, and you can see that it's actually increasing that render time by quite a bit now, but we've got that look on there. Now the final thing to get the wipe after this transition right, we could do it in After Effects, or we could also do it here in Cinema, again using the geometry of the shape. So I want to do that as much as possible. We also want the thickness to just come up a little bit as we're fading out. So let's bring this back in so we can see where that reveal point is. Yeah, so we want it to come in just after there and then kind of fade out about there. Turn that off and come over to our cylinder here, and we're going to put in a keyframe. Come back to where the lights start to fade, add another keyframe, come back to our previous keyframe, and we're just going to turn this up now to 1. And Alt click on that, and now we'll see those lines get a lot more defined. Okay, so to use that geometry we need a shader effector. So I'm going to select this cloner here and Mograph effector shader, and that will mean that this cloner is being affected by that shader, and all we want to do is change the scale. So let's do that to 0, and we're going to need some fall off. We use a sphere and invert the sphere. Come over to our top view, put that in the center, bring it right up, and we need to make this massive. Yep, that looks pretty big to me. So now we should make this absolute. Oh yeah, no, we now need to scale it down. So yeah, we come back here to the start of the process when those lights begin to fade down. Keyframe the scale there, and then put another keyframe right here at the end down to 0. So now you see that those lines are just at the very top there. Turn that fall off down, sorry, there we go. So again, let's just check how that syncs up with our reveal. Just going to turn this off so that it doesn't choke it so much. So we want it to go about there. Yeah, that looks pretty damn straight. We're going to go over now to the shader here, and yeah, like just put a little bit more easing in on that. Okay, right, I think we are good to go. Okay, cool. So by 170, it's all done. So let's go to our render settings, and we're going to go to this output, and we're going to change it to 170. Then we're going to save this with an alpha channel. I'm not sure if we'll need the alpha channel, but we may as well. And let's create a new folder for our render. Right then, well, that took 1 hour 32 minutes to complete, so we need to look at optimizing that render a bit too long. Next section should be a bit easier, so we're going to turn this off here, turn that off, and that off, and the lights shouldn't have any effect. So we just need to see this piece and take it from the moment where it first comes into shot, which is there. So change this now to a new destination. Okay, a new folder, call that matte. Change the name to matte, and we set our output to 122. And then the end frame will be 155. And this should fly through. Yeah, much quicker. So while that's doing, we'll jump over to After Effects and import our clips. I think it's probably going to be a bit too advanced for most people. We'll see. There are obviously people who are way more advanced than I am, having said that. So we'll bring in this one. And we are going to change the frame rate to 24. And bring in the matte that we've just rendered. Again, change that frame rate to 24 frames per second to fit with our comp. So we can turn this off now and bring these two bad boys in. We'll go over to frame 122. Drop this in. And hide it. Okay. Right then, so what we need to do is we need to use that matte over this. So we're going to set this to a Luma matte. And that way it's just going to bring in that section there. Ah, it looks like we were missing the corner. We can clean that up afterwards quite easily. And you see how this builds over the top nicely now. Okay. So we need to duplicate that as well, drop it over the top there, and we're going to put this one in the additive mode, so it kind of bleaches over the top there. This we can cut and place that on top so that, oh no, yeah, we just want it on there. Take this off. Let's change the color here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy what I did before, just to save time. So what I've got is we've got levels and a tritone tint, and what we're doing is we're going to animate that tritone tint so that it blends in gradually. And we can paste it again onto here. That way we get more of a smooth transition between the two. Okay, so then we're going to just fix that little piece of missing info at the back there. So I'm going to duplicate this one more time, put it to the bottom, take off the Luma track matte, so we're just going to mask this in so it doesn't just jump in from nowhere. That's it. Right, we're getting there now. Let's just view this at full quality now so we don't see so much of that aliasing. And I want to add a little glow onto this bit so that it just pops out that a little bit more. Let's lower the threshold, and we're going to increase that and the intensity. Yeah, that's what it's all about. So we just need to alter it so that the threshold is higher until this point here. So we'll set that there and then come back to where that's going crazy, increase that threshold. Okay, yes, we've done the intensity as well. We just need to add some motion blur to this now, I think, and then we're done. So I'm gonna use Real Smart Blur for this. What this does is it just kind of smooths out all of those animations, and because it's moving so fast that we want to really emphasize that feeling of movement. So let's take a look at this and how it's quite different from the last one. There's a few things that have changed in terms of the lighting, but essentially it's the same idea. We can just drop in our title here. There's no need to redo that again. It's just some text faded in and out with a blur. Well, let's have a look. So I think that's actually better than the previous attempt, but I'm going to just add in a little fade out here, which we need to do. Just so it isn't such an extreme change. And you can see how it's already, saved everything in RAM still, and it's just firing through that. So our RAM preview is much quicker. Get some sound effects on that and we're done. We'll import this back into Final Cut, Premiere. Let's see how it looks. Love it. Okay, that was a really long one, guys, so I hope you stayed with me. You know, obviously there's a lot going on here and we could have made it take less time, but wanted to play around a bit and, you know, push the boundaries a bit more than we have done in the past. So I hope you found that interesting, even if it does go beyond your comfort zone. So yeah, I would you know, be really keen to try this out with some other shots. If you have any in mind, get in touch, drop us a line in the comments below and we'll be sure to reply to them as soon as we can. Thank you. Bye.